Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask the clerk to report House Committee Sub to House Bill 240.
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 240.
Gentleman from Greenup.
This sub was used to increase the area of the remote area where people could do database and pharmacies, and I move adoption of House Committee Sub to House Bill 240.
Motion is for the adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Greenup.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield to the gentleman from Bullet 26 for a friendly amendment.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Bullet.
Mr. Speaker, would the clerk report floor amendment number 3?
Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 3 to House Bill 240.
Gentleman from Bullet.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, this floor amendment solves a problem for the Kentucky Hospital Association from an unintended consequence from a bill we passed last year. This also has the change had a great impact on rural hospitals in Kentucky. It also helps other closed-door pharmacies that locate in Kentucky due to our shipping hub without any impact on patient safety. For those of us that are in the Louisville area, we have McKesson and Chewy, which are located, and several of the members here, gentleman from Jefferson 46, and some others, lady from Jefferson 44. I think we have quite a number of constituents that work for these facilities that are impacted by this, and this amendment will help to clarify that. One of the other things it'll do is it will encourage economic development for more closed-door pharmacies, and it's just an overall benefit to our area. So if there are no questions, I move for the passage of House Floor Amendment 3.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 3. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. House Floor Amendment 3 is adopted. Gentleman from Greenup.
Mr. Speaker, I move passage of House Bill 240 as amended by the House Committee Sub and the House Floor Amendment 3.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a committee substitute that corrects a mistake or a misstated figure on line 15 of page 6 of the bill. Mr. Speaker, please ask the clerk to report House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 363.
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 363.
Gentleman from Pendleton.
Mr. Speaker, on page 6, line 15 of House Bill 363, one too many zeros has been added to the figure. House Committee Sub 1 removes one of the zeros to correct this mistake. I move adoption of House Committee Sub 1 to House Bill 363.
Motion is for the adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Pendleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 363 is the product of a collaborative effort between the Kentucky 911 Services Board, both professional staff 911 associations, the Kentucky League of Cities, the Kentucky Association of Counties, and the Kentucky State Police, who all support this bill. First and foremost, this bill does not raise Kentucky's wireless 911 fee. It merely redirects funding within the existing statutory framework. There are three main elements to House Bill 363. First, the bill shifts a portion of the 911 Service Board's competitive grant fund into the Next Generation 911 Technology Fund. Under House Bill 363, the cap on the grant fund will be lowered from $3 million to $2.5 million. For those of you unfamiliar, Next Generation 911 represents a quantum leap in 911 technology that will improve caller location accuracy, reduce first responder response time, and ultimately save lives. Because the world of emergency response, mere seconds can make the difference between life and death. In a next generation 911 environment, all 911 call centers are part of a connected IP-based network, which allows emergency calls to be transferred to any other call center in the event of a natural disaster or other crisis event. Also, wireless calls are routed based on the caller's exact location rather than by cell tower triangulation, increasing caller location accuracy. This will greatly reduce call transfers that take place when a wireless call is routed to the wrong call center, which may go to a neighboring county or sometimes even a neighboring state. There are other benefits to callers as well. Next Generation 911 allows text, photos, and video to be shared between callers and 911 call centers. In 2019, Kentucky qualified for a $2.3 million share of a national Next Generation 911 grant. Matched with $1.5 million in funding from the 911 Board's own administrative account, the Board was able to launch a series of foundational Next Generation 911 projects in the last year. Shifting a small portion of the grant fund into the Next Generation 911 technology fund will create a stable funding mechanism to continue these essential projects beyond the federal grant period, which expires in March of this year. The second major element of House Bill 363 restores the partial funding to 6 KSP posts that no longer qualify for funding under current status and law support funding last year. This will restore more than $350,000 annually to allow KSP to maintain Next Generation 911 ready equipment at all 16 posts. We saw a great demonstration of the value of KSP's unique backup capabilities during the December's catastrophic tornadoes when several KSP posts provided critical 911 backup service to Western Kentucky call centers impacted by the tornadoes. Finally, the bill adds an accountability clause that requires all certified 911 call centers to adopt board-funded Next Generation 911 programs, projects, and initiatives. Local call centers will maintain autonomy over most equipment choices, but this clause will ensure that all certified call centers progress along the path to full statewide Next Generation 911 deployment in lockstep. This language is very specific and only requiring adoption of Next Generation 911 elements that are absolutely necessary to statewide Next Generation 911 deployment and are paid for in their entirety by the 911 Service Board. I know how much we all despise unfunded mandates. This is the exact opposite, a funded mandate that only applies to a specific list of board-funded Next Generation 911 projects. Mr. Speaker, before I move for passage of this bill, there is a floor amendment I would like to consider. Mr. Speaker, please ask the clerk to report House Floor Amendment 1 to House Bill 363 as amended by House Committee Sub 1.
Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 1 to House Bill 363.
Gentleman from Pendleton.
Mr. Speaker, this amendment was requested by Kentucky Leagues of Cities and the Kentucky Association of Counties. It places a 2-year sunset provision on the redirection of 911 fees from the Competitive Grant Fund to Statewide Next Generation Technology Fund. Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I move passage of House Bill 363 as amended by House Committee Substitute 1 and House Floor Amendment 1.
Motion for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 1. Is there any discussion? Roll call having been called for by 2 or more members. Having since been withdrawn. Those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Floor Amendment 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Pendleton.
Mr. Speaker, if there are no further questions or comments, I move passage of House Bill 363 as amended by Committee Substitute 1 and House Floor Amendment 1.